Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Ducky Wucky and I've been doing reviews and rankings of all the new episodes of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia season 17 as they've been coming out. Now you know me, I like to keep my intros short, so let's jump right into The Gang Goes to the Dog Track. It's an episode that I was very excited for based on the name alone. It sounded like a classic romp, but oh my gosh, it was a lot and I wasn't expecting it. Just a quick heads up, this episode is going to mention the mistreatment of animals, which I am incredibly sensitive to, so this was a really hard watch for me. I very much appreciate this cold open, and I also very much appreciate an episode where they never even set foot in the bar. Those are always interesting. Also, I love how this starts right away with one of Dennis and Dee's most prominent character traits, which is their sense of superiority because they grew up rich. I love them both dressed fancily, with Dennis looking like a carnival barker, and with Dee's outfit being ridiculous, but like very much giving like Desert Rose energy. One thing that I've been really enjoying about this season is that a lot of the episodes have had a very clear through line, and of all things, the through line in this episode is raw dogs. This first comes up when we see Mac raw dogging the trip to the dog track and the bus, which is basically a concept of like going an entire trip without any entertainment or any creature comforts. So Mac is literally just sitting there with a stone cold expression staring at the seat in front of him. Also, this is referenced by Dennis as a TikTok trend, which I believe makes this the first time It's Always Sunny has mentioned TikTok. And it was a very brief line, they didn't dwell on it, so it wasn't too weird. Also, in terms of the cut to title card, huge missed opportunity. If they had just cut to the title sequence after Dee says, "Kentucky Derby, here we come," and then they found out after the title sequence where they actually were, I think that would have been infinitely funnier. The version that we sort of have just kind of spells out the joke. This episode is interesting because it's filled with like a lot of like, intellectually, I know this should be funny, but there's a sore lack of proper punchlines in this episode. So it's kind of a sequence of concepts and moments that begin, kind of have a funny moment in there, but don't like land it. So there were not really any laugh out loud moments. But I do think that the scene where Mac and Charlie are arguing about which dog in the race is the rawest while Charlie is literally eating a raw hot dog is really funny. Also, I must say, the set work on the dog track is like incredible. They picked such fitting extras. I don't know where they found these people. And they also dirtied up the space enough that it felt lived in and just so grimy. You can just imagine what it would smell like and be like and how it would feel to specifically walk on the floor. They really went out of their way to make the floor in this episode as disgusting as possible. And that makes sense because this is the grossest episode by the season by far. I think it might be the grossest episode of the entire series. Also, the side characters in this episode are like very classic It's Always Sunny. I love how two of the kookiest characters, like the guy who looks like Dog the Bounty Hunter and the guy who looks like Snoop Dogg, are literally just throwaways. I love how they immediately set the tone for the weird guy that Charlie and Mac meet by having him be barefoot. He's also like in a meditative state, so it's immediately this like crazy balance between like cool and like disgusting. I'm thinking to myself whether or not I prefer this character or Alex Wolff. I do prefer that he is a non-celebrity actor. It certainly makes it less distracting and makes it seem more authentically Sunny, but at the same time, I think that Alex Wolff's character was funnier. I also love how Charlie seemingly feels like a kinship and appreciation for this man because he's even grosser than he is. So this is where the episode loses me a little bit. So Frank, Dennis, and Dee are hanging out with Frank's gambling buddies, and Frank starts about doing terrible, inappropriate things to dogs in order to get money from Saudi Arabians. Now this is like part classic Frank scheme, but the part about doing those things to animals is just too far in my opinion. It's just really gross. And I was like, please don't let this come up again. But I knew it was gonna, but I was still hoping this would not be revisited. And I was almost able to forget about it because it is very funny how Dennis and Dee immediately fall into another addiction. They both have very addictive personalities. And of course they would get addicted to gambling after winning one time. I also think that's very funny that they stop betting on the dogs and just start doing rock, paper, scissors and them losing their money right away. And for the rest of the episode, not being able to win anything back is pretty darn funny. Also, I think the two subplots going on here are pretty fitting. Like, of course, Dennis and Mac would meet a gross guy. Of course, Dennis and Dee would try to be classy, but end up doing crazy things. This is in somewhat of a similar vein as The Gang Goes to the Jersey Shore, with Dennis and Dee going off and trying to prove a point about the Jersey Shore before eventually experiencing the most horrifying thing in the whole wide world and changing their minds. Also, back at the Mac and Charlie subplot, I love the continuous flip-flopping we have on this barefooted man. As Mac says, he'll do like one cool thing and then do like the least cool thing you've ever seen. And I think it's funny but I think it sort of feels a little scattershot. And like, I don't understand what the point of this character is, but both of them definitely appreciate how raw he is, how he just kind of does what he wants. And we get a very interesting insight into Mac's personal life here, how he's been trying to act raw in order to feel joy again in his life. I guess because his life has been so crazy that it has lost all meaning. I also think it's really funny how he talked about jumping off the top of a jungle gym just to feel something. This is a bit of a retreading of Frank's Nakoma because we have a side character who starts off kind of normal but ends up weird. This is a little different because the character first seems weird, then seems normal enough that Charlie and Mac trust him to go back to his dog kennel. I think it's in a similar vein, but again, Alex Wolff's character is just such a stronger arc and just makes so much more sense. And it's a clear progression, not a back and forth. Now, as much as I really didn't like this episode, Dee and Dennis racing on their hands and knees and eating dog food in order to make their money back is going to absolutely end up becoming like the iconic image of this season. I already see it used in promo material. And it was a funny scene, but it was pretty brief, pretty anticlimactic. But also, Dennis and Dee gagging at each other afterward is so funny because Caitlin and Glenn are just so talented. Also, I think one thing that prevented me from having a good experience watching this episode is the fact that Hulu did me so dirty during. Every single commercial break was around 3 minutes long. And so the first time I watched the episode, I completely forgot why Dennis and Dee were doing all of these things. Although, of course, it's to earn back their money. And of course, it would make sense that if they're trying so many desperate measures, including this, and it's still not enough to win back their money, they would end up doing what they did at the end of the episode, but it still is just so much. Also, back at the Dog Guys trailer, I don't know why Charlie and Mac said they were going to close down the dog track. I don't remember that being a thing that was said, but the guy killing himself was, I guess, pretty much in his character and relatively classic Sunny, but it felt unearned and I didn't really care about the guy. And so it sort of felt like a hollower version of those other things, such as the classic Deer Hunter homage Russian roulette scene we were all familiar with. Also, the final reveal that Dennis and Dee did the same terrible thing that Frank did to a dog earlier was really disturbing. It genuinely made me really upset and feel like I needed to take a freaking shower after watching it. It wasn't even disturbing in a fun way. I was like, this is genuinely too far, and in a way that made it really hard for me to enjoy anything else about the episode. But I do think that this does serve as yet another terrible twist of Frank being an evil genius, where none of this was true, no one was actually there for the dogs, but instead he just bet that he could get his own children to do this. Is yet another gut punch and an example of how depraved and evil Frank is. Like, this season has shown me just how evil Frank is. I really didn't think that he could top himself after Frank is in a coma, but he somehow did. And unlike the previous episode, this one did end on a strong joke, but having the image of the burning van didn't feel particularly justified. Like, I understand how it fits into the story, but it just didn't do it for me. Like, it wasn't like a twist or a joke. It was just like, yeah, they said they were gonna do that, so there it is. Overall, I found this episode really disappointing, and I wouldn't have disliked it as much if it wasn't so highly disturbing. I feel very strongly also about how humans are treated in the show too, and I'm very disturbed by the gang's actions towards people. But in this episode, the treatment of the dog in question is something that I was very sensitive to, and I would not be okay with that in any context. So it really bothered me and put a dark cloud over the episode, and as you can see, it's genuinely kind of upsetting me right now. Also, combined with this episode not really being a laugh out loud, with again, a troubling lack of punchlines, I found this episode to have decent concepts, but overall very weak writing. So in regard to my final ranking, I'm unfortunately gonna have to put it at dead last as a result of all of its flaws, and also the fact that this is the one that I would not want to rewatch the most. But either way, I hope this wasn't too much of a bummer. I'm sure the next episode is gonna be great. Also, everyone look forward to a video that I will be filming soon about what the worst episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is. I think we talk a lot about what the best episodes were, and I think everyone agrees this is The Nightman Cometh, right? But I wanted to make a video about what the worst one might be, and also later I would like to make one about the most underrated gems. Also, everyone, please consider becoming a channel member so I can shout you out at the end of all of my videos. As of now, I have one YouTube member who I love with my whole heart because it is my boyfriend, Andrew Fiore. Thank you so much, Andrew, for supporting me this month for only 99 cents. That's right. Membership to my channel only costs 99 cents. You will be supporting me, helping me make better videos, and will see yourself shouted out at the end of all of my videos. Alright everyone, have a sunny day, and may God bless you all. Goodbye. Mwah.